Hello again. Welcome to Herd Immunity News. My name's Marcus Botza. We are delighted to welcome back a friend of the show, Mr. Jim Ferguson. Jim Ferguson is a former Brexit Party candidate. He is a farmer, an entrepreneur, a businessman, and he is causing a storm on social media right now, getting millions of views from all around the world. But before I go any further, can I just say, Jim Ferguson, how are you, sir?
I'm really good, Marcus. Delighted to be back on Herd Immunity News with you. As always, it's just such a fantastic show you've got going here. And I'm always very, very pleased to come and spend some time with you and your followers as well.
Absolutely. And my followers are certainly following you. And I encourage all of them to go on and look at your fantastic information that you're putting out there and your great interviews. But today, if it's okay with you, Jim, I'd like to talk about President Trump and the four indictments that he's facing. Now, he's had a plethora of allegations put to him, the Russia hoax, Ukraine. I'm parroting the great man himself. And now we see this indictment that actually threatens to go straight into the election period. Now, if we look at the polls, President Trump is running away with it, not just as the candidate for the Republican Party, but also to beat Mr. Joe Biden. I want your take, if I can get it, please, on this whole indictment situation that we're seeing in the witch hunt that President Trump is going through.
Well, since even before he became president, there was this whole narrative that he was connected to Russia. He was this, he was that. If he got in, World War III would erupt. I knew police officers that I was very, very good friends with, who were convinced that Donald Trump was going to start World War III. And in the reality, of course, as we all found out, Marcus, it was probably one of the most peaceful periods of time. I don't think there was any invasions going on, and I think there might have been one or two things happened in Syria, but really, on the whole, nothing. This is all about the deep state, the globalists, because they know that Trump is not a globalist. They will throw everything and do everything they possibly can in their power, legitimate and illegitimate, truthful and completely untruthful, and they will try whatever they can do to stop him or tarnish him in whatever way they can. But the reality is this: they've tried it. They've already done all of this, and they have completely failed. And I actually think what we're witnessing here, because if he starts to go through this process, there are 47 former intelligence officers that could be getting called to the stand and questioned. And remember, they all said, oh, there was evidence about Russia collusion and it was all about this and that. Well, it turned out it wasn't. This is just a last-ditch attempt. Biden is desperate. He knows he's desperate. He knows he's been exposed with the corruption through his son and Burisma and all of the things that have happened in Ukraine. And there's more and more and more coming out almost every day now about his involvement in serious and organized crime. There's child trafficking coming on the radar now. There's organ harvesting coming on the radar now. I don't think this is going to go the way they think. And if anything, I think it's going to explode in their faces. I believe that they will not stop Donald Trump, not only from standing, but gaining the presidency again.
Absolutely. And I think, as you correctly point out, when the information does come out, it will link so many members of the CIA and the FBI to the suppression of information that we already know about during the election period. The four indictments are linked to the election and President Trump's accusations that the election was a robbery and a steal. There are 2,000 US citizens who have ready to sign affidavits to face up to 2 years in jail, Jim, to put this testimony on the line about the ballot harvesting, the power outages. There were floods in toilets. There was a whole plethora of Hollywood script nonsense to make sure that the needle could go up the way. You saw the charts when the time hit, they realized that Biden was going to lose, and all of a sudden there was a massive leap. Will this information be allowed in court?
Well, they might try to censor it, of course. It's what they do. I was reading a report about before when Elon Musk took over Twitter, and there was daily contact, probably several times a day, between the old guard of Twitter and the sort of the Democrats, those that were involved in it. They were censoring, they were blocking, they were suspending, they were completely hiding it. And of course, no mention of the Hunter Biden laptop, nothing at all. It was all just a hoax. It was all a conspiracy theory. And yet it was a blatant lie. I think they're not going to get away with it. And of course, there are very powerful people like George Soros, who is on camera admitting that Donald Trump and the presidency was not meant to happen. It shouldn't have happened. Their candidate, Hillary Clinton, was supposed to be in there. They were a shoo-in. She had done pre-recorded interviews talking about her having won the presidency. All of that had to get because Donald Trump came in and stormed through with a massive victory. But I remember watching the election, Marcus, where those two lines were going across.
Sure.
And then they started to come up with all these excuses about how toilets had flooded, and they had to close the polling booths and the centres, and they were putting up boards and blocking out the windows so people couldn't see in. I mean, you don't do that if you got nothing to hide, do you? So it was quite clear that the steal was there, the steal was in, the fix was in, and they went to Plan B. And of course, there's plenty of CCTV footage that shows that once those polling centres closed, they didn't actually close at all. The back doors got opened and vehicle loads of boxes and ballots started to come in. So there's no doubt in my mind that this was a complete and utter fraud, and that the president who's sitting in the White House currently is a fraud and an illegitimate president. And although he is technically the commander-in-chief, quite honestly, I've watched footage recently of him interacting with American forces, and you can see there is no respect there for him. They're virtually turning their backs on him. They know he's a fraud. They may not say it to his face, but they know it in their hearts, and you can see it written all over their faces.
Absolutely. There's actually footage, Jim, of Sleepy Joe Biden addressing honourable US troops, and they don't react to what he said. And he actually says, "Clap, you dumb bastards." I don't know if you've actually seen that footage, but it's an absolute disgrace and affrontage. But just to touch on some of the points you made about the suppression of information, of film footage and actual testimonies from witnesses who were shocked and stunned to see that they were kept away from the booths. But this all happened during the COVID era. I don't think it's a coincidence that this all happened during the COVID era, and we saw numbers that really would even make my hair stand on edge, on end. There were actually some states that had more voters than they had people.
That's right. I mean, it was like not just a few; it was like tens of thousands of more voters than populations of the places, as you quite correctly pointed out. The whole thing was completely ridiculous. They went into overdrive. They knew that Trump was going to sail through to a massive victory, and the powers that be, those globalist powers, took a decision to cheat. That's beyond doubt now. They took a decision to cheat their policemen, their WEF members. They had them lined up, but they knew that they weren't going to win it legitimately. So they cheated, I believe, in my opinion.
And the fear is, of course, Jim, that President Trump actually is allowed to stand and he wins. I mean, it's really a no-brainer at the moment to say that he would win, like he did last time. For many people, I think you and I share that belief that he won last time. But the worry for the World Economic Forum, for George Soros, for Bill Gates, for these dictators in waiting, the fear from them is that Trump wins and then the whole World Economic Forum blueprint starts to unravel. Do you think that if Trump wins in 2024, the World Economic Forum will be a thing of the past?
I think that justice will be done, and everybody that's been involved in sex trafficking of children, organ harvesting, abuse, Pizzagate, and all of the things that we're hearing about, the death of the Obama chef, and all of these things are connected to Podesta, Clinton. The whole thing is going to come tumbling down. Epstein, the list goes on and on. These people are thoroughly evil. And a lot of them have been put into these positions because they can be blackmailed quite easily. The deep state, the powers that exist, very powerful people. You might be surprised. They're not the typical names that you might think of, but they're really the ones behind the scenes. They want their people in. They go to great lengths inviting people to places like Davos and other occasions, and they are gauging who will do their bidding. And there's lots of things that they get them involved in to find out if they have the stomach for it, and if they can fall into that category, can they then be trusted and put into those positions of power, like we've seen with Sunak and Hunt and Trudeau and Macron and all the others that are there, including Joe Biden, John Kerry. These are people that have been put into these positions for a purpose and a reason. But if Trump does get back into power, I think you will see a very different Donald Trump to what you saw the last time. I don't mean in a negative way. I think he will be absolutely putting America first, as he always does. But he will be looking to see that justice is served. And that's why this is, I believe, a fight to the death, quite literally, a fight to the death, where people are going to be made to be forced to basically choose a side. And people are going to have to choose that side very carefully, because the one side can't really afford to lose. It really is like that. I see it, although we're talking it's in a political sense, Marcus. I see it very much as it's all in or nothing. You know, it's a bit like Ukraine. It's a bit like this whole business about Ukraine and Russia in the West. There's going to come a point where one side is simply not going to back down. One side simply can't afford to back down, and then before you know it, it's like completely game on. So I think we're going to have to wait and see how that actually transpires. But certainly Trump is the man to restore justice. He's the one that's going to put things right. And I believe he also will be very successful in bringing peace back to the world. But if it goes, if there's something else happens or something occurs and God forbid Joe Biden gets back in, or Kamala Harris or Obama or anybody else, the world is going to be in a very, very bad place.
Amen to all that. And it is a battle between good and evil, as far as I can see. It's a battle between people that have values and morals. And people may shake their heads and laugh at that. But as you correctly said, while Donald Trump was in office, there were no world wars. Since Joe Biden's taken over, or since Biden's been put in front of the cameras to stumble along, fall down, forget where he is, forget what day and time and what year he's living in, we've seen a war in Afghanistan. We are currently seeing the war in Ukraine, and it looks like we may even see a war with China involved in Taiwan. But I think, would you agree with me, Jim, to say that the future of the United Kingdom, forget the Free West for a moment, but the future of the United Kingdom really is tied on the results of the election in America next year? When Trump was in power, Boris Johnson himself was stopped bringing the Chinese in to be part of the Huawei project. Let's not forget World Economic Forum, Boris Johnson. Some of our followers are still devotees to them, and they'll find their way in time. But Boris Johnson wanted to bring the Chinese in, not just to have complete access to our military secrets, but also to get involved with HS2. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, certainly, no, it's fine. I mean, you got to always remember. People have to remember. And I know that Boris Johnson is a very personable guy. He's a very likable guy, but he's also a member of the World Economic Forum. And Jeremy Hunt, his wife, is Chinese. Now, that in itself is not a problem, but she is Chinese, yes. And she is on the payroll of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. Yes. And, you know, other fairly senior politicians have raised concerns about Chinese involvement, Chinese espionage, Chinese grooming, if you want to call it that, of British politicians through large donations and large sums of money coming in. But we mustn't forget that our Chancellor is very deeply connected through his wife to communist China. And we should not underestimate that involvement.
Absolutely not. And when you mention some of those MPs, I think of Labour Party's Barry Gardiner, who was a shadow cabinet minister, and he receipted, this is in the press, this is my conspiracy theory, he's given up to 80, I think it was £85,000 or even slightly more than that. And he said, well, it was good enough for Theresa May, so it's good enough for me. So that shows you that the levels of corruption that that exist within our country right now, to see that these people are simply bought off. Biden's son has been linked to deals with Ukrainian mayor's wife. And more people, I think, through information that they're getting from the likes of your channel in our own humble way, Herd Immunity News, more and more people are actually saying, well, look at these guys, look what they're saying. We're not getting this in the mainstream media. And it's about time that we take off our love and adoration of bungling Boris to actually see what's really going on. I don't know if you saw the comments that Stanley Johnson made today on Talk TV, Jim.
I saw your post, Marcus, but as I always do,
yes,
and I thought it was an excellent post. I didn't actually see him on Talk TV, I confess, but I did read about it on your own channel, and I appreciate that.
Well, it falls into the whole climate change debacle, that the world, that man-made climate change is responsible for the warming of the planet. Although I don't know if you're suffering and boiling to death in beautiful Inverness, but it's about 14, 15 degrees out here in central Scotland. I don't know what the temperature's like in Inverness, but
I'm not in Inverness, Marcus. I haven't
really?
been here for about 3 or 4 months, but
All right.
that's all right. I've been actually down in London for quite a long period of time, but it's pretty close, I've got to say. But yeah, I mean, when all is said and done, I think that what we're about to see in the election that's coming up in 2024, it's not that long away actually, when you think about it, is it?
Nope.
It's going to be a real eye opener, and I think people are going to have to pay very close attention to the fact that we might see them trying to do the same as what they did again before. I mean, if they got away with it once, they will try again.
Absolutely, and that's what everybody's frightened of. Obviously, living in the United Kingdom, I realize the importance of having someone like President Trump in the White House to the other side of that coin, someone like Joe Biden. And I mean, World War III and nuclear conflict isn't out of the realms of possibility, as we see them continually hyping up this type of language. We see this from Antony Blinken, we see it from Joe Biden himself, and in this country we see it from the usual suspects, Tobias Ellwood and his kind, that have absolutely no off switch to this. They've no way of pulling the handbrake on this. You and I have been speaking to military experts. Godfrey Bloom, for example, I would put in that category. We've both chatted with him, and he sees that the Ukraine war will come to an end because they're running out of resources, and there is no appetite for it with the American public or the British public. Where do you see it going yourself, Jim?
Well, I mean, Godfrey did come on the channel. I know he's been on your channel. It was a great interview. I enjoyed speaking with him. He's got an incredible depth of knowledge and experience, and quite really, he's quite brilliant. And I'm certainly hoping, I know you will be too, to get him back on our respective channels to get his opinions and to find out, his thoughts. But I asked him the question about Ukraine, and he was of the opinion that Washington are very much against any kind of peace negotiation or agreement. They put so much money, and I we suspect so much money laundering has gone on that they just can't afford to pull out. This is where I go back to the point where one side's not willing to back down, and where we go from there is anyone's guess. But that moment for a peace deal was there, and Boris Johnson went across and he scuppered it. I think under instructions from either his WEF handlers or from Joe Biden, or a combination of the two.
President Trump, I agree with all of that wholeheartedly, but President Trump was giving a speech the other day, as he's doing now. He's using his platform to fight back against this attack on him, and he said he's information from his military intel is saying that the cupboard is emptying faster than ever in the US, and that they will be completely deleted off the stockpile he built up while in office. So we know the UK is deleted. We know that NATO's deleted. We know that the US is deleted. This is a very worrying situation for anyone that cares about the security of their country in the United States, Europe, or the United Kingdom. They're playing straight into the hands of Vladimir Putin. As the BRICS alliance gets even stronger and more countries start to apply, what's your thoughts about the future of the BRICS alignment and Russia?
Well, one thing that you I know you will be aware of this, but people need to be watching very, very closely is what's going on in Africa. Right, there's from east to west, right across that band in North Africa, where you've got Mali, you've got Niger, you've got Burkina Faso. They are coming out in support of each other, and they are warning that if there is any kind of, as they term it, imperialistic ambitions from France, for example, that they have 1,500 troops there. They've been told that they must leave. They are no longer welcome there. If there's any kind of attempt to strong arm those African nations, you might see the entire continent erupt and fall in behind Vladimir Putin, who they seem to have a lot of respect for. And indeed, were flying lots of Russian flags. Now, of course, it could be argued that those flags were being handed out by Russian forces, just or propaganda. But they're not that stupid. I think, well, they think that maybe they're stupid. They're not stupid at all. The people in those countries are a lot smarter than they're given credit for. They've been held back. Their gold, their uranium, their diamonds, they've all been harvested and taken out. And that's why France has such large stockpiles of gold. But it's within those regions that they control that gold came from. So I can understand why the African nations are standing up and saying no more. We're not going to put up with it. And rather carefully and rather cleverly, Vladimir Putin has come in there and he has said, I see what you're doing. I know what the pain you're going through, and we are going to stand with you. We are going to give you the respect that you deserve. And that's why we're seeing that there. It's like a game of chess, Marcus, and the chess pieces are being put into position. As NATO prepares to have a go at Russia, I suspect, through Ukraine, Russia is moving chess pieces around the world, and they are drawing up lines, allied lines of further influence and potentially attack for any World War III that decides to kick off. So we live in uncertain times, Marcus, but that's where we're at with that. And I would watch Africa very, very closely.
Absolutely. And just to clear up, I should have said this before I spoke about BRICS. We're talking about a coalition of trade. We're talking about coalition of weapons. We're talking about a coalition of support. That's between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But there are 40-odd members looking to join. And as those powers and those economies are growing, China's GDP was at 5.4% last year. The UK's is at 0.1%, narrowly avoided recession. These countries are being prosperous. They are building their defenses. They're building their resilience. And as you say, if it's a chess match, we have a chess champion in Vladimir Putin. That's not to say that I'm supporting him. That's not to saying that he's an angel. We have a chess champion, a chess grand master against a tiddlywinks player in Biden and his regime. Thank you very much to Mr. Jim Ferguson for appearing on Herd Immunity News. Cheers, Jim.
My absolute pleasure to be here, Marcus. And as ever, always good to talk to you again. Thank you very much indeed for the opportunity.
Take care. Bye now.